So today we're driving to certain spots in Los Angeles as part of an ongoing series where I tell Mr. Brent here true crime stories, BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Unsolved.
Today's mystery is probably one of the most famous unsolved murder cases I've ever read. And enough with the pleasantries, let's get into it. On January 15, 1947, the remains of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, or as she is commonly known, the Black Dahlia, were discovered by Betty Bersinger on a morning stroll on the block of 3800 Norton Avenue in Los Angeles. The body was cut in half and so pale and thoroughly drained of blood that Betty Bersinger actually mistook it for a mannequin at first.
Oh.
The body was cut with surgical precision, leaving no trauma to internal organs or bones, and her face had been cut from her mouth towards her ears to form a haunting, ever-present smile. There was no blood on the ground, making it clear that the body was moved there after she was murdered.
Okay.
9 days after Short's discovery, an envelope was received by the Examiner, addressed in horrific fashion using cutout letters clipped from movie ads. It read, "Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." As promised, the envelope contained Short's social security card, birth certificate, snapshots, and an old address book with some pages missing. Gasoline was rubbed on the contents to remove the fingerprints.
Life hack right there.
What if it caught up
it-
in flames in transit? Do you think he
Yeah.
was like sitting at his home nervous, thinking, oh, I really hope they got my letter? Many notes were sent to the police and press that followed. One handwritten letter read, "Turning in Wednesday, January 29, had my fun with police. Black Dahlia, Avenger."
Or it could have just been some random person who had sent these letters and it's not the killer.
Why would you pretend to be a killer?
Why would a killer kill someone in the first place?
Before arriving in LA, Elizabeth spent time in San Diego with a man named Robert Manley, who drove her to LA and helped her check into the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Many reports state that this is the last place that Short was seen alive. And like our old friend the Cecil Hotel, the Biltmore is reportedly haunted. Hotel guests claim to have seen Elizabeth walking on the first floor in a black dress, only to disappear into a wall. She's also seen on the 10th and 11th floors.
No, absolutely not.
If I had the option to haunt a place until someone found out who murdered me, I think I would do that.
So if I step on a fly, does the fly's ghost stay around?
Well, I mean, this is assuming that a fly is capable of complex thought.
All right, what about a dog or a dolphin?
I don't think that's impossible that there could be a ghost dolphin or dog.
So you think somewhere along the line, evolutionarily, there was the first animal that was able to turn into a ghost and that somehow benefited them?
All right. Others state that after Manley left, the guy who dropped her off, Short headed to the nearby Crown Grill bar, which stands today as Club Galaxy. And that place is actually the true last sighting of the Dahlia, people claim.
It's a strip club? Was she a stripper?
No, it's not. Was it always a strip club? Although this case has been officially listed as unsolved for nearly 70 years, there's no shortage of interesting suspects. But I'm only going to go over what are, in my opinion, the most interesting ones. The first suspect was Robert Manley, the guy who dropped her off at the Biltmore Hotel.
Ah, the Uber driver.
Yeah, the Uber driver. But not only did he return to San Diego almost a week before her body was discovered, but he also passed a polygraph test. But it is worth noting that in 1954 he was committed to a mental hospital due to hearing voices. However, when administered sodium pentothal, which apparently is a truth serum, he was proven...
What?
I'm not fucking with you. That is literally what it is.
So they got fucking Snape on the line and said, hey, give us your truth serum. This is why cases are unsolved, because they're working with 1947 technology.
Anyways,
He checks out.
he checks out. On to the next one. The second suspect was Army Corporal Joseph Dumaze, who claimed to be blackout drunk with Elizabeth in San Francisco a couple days before her discovery. When asked if he thought he killed Elizabeth, he actually said yes, but evidence later showed that he was on his military base the day of her death. The final suspect is George Hodel. But before we begin, let's visit George's home at the time in LA. The house had a secret room where the children were not allowed to go, and nothing screams innocent like a secret room.
Wait, so did the children know of the secret room they weren't allowed to go into?
This is where it gets interesting. So, George's son, Steve Hodel, who was 5 at the time of the Dahlia murder, later became a police investigator for 17 years, and after retiring from the force, became convinced that his father, George Hodel, had actually killed the Black Dahlia. And looking at the facts, Steve Hodel makes a pretty compelling case. So George Hodel was highly intelligent. He studied surgery in medical school and also ran LA County's venereal disease clinic, which would also suggest that he's capable of the surgical disembowelment and mutilation of Elizabeth Short's body that was found at the scene of the crime. Also, despite being a busy doctor, George Hodel was also a busy bachelor, having 11 children from 5 different women.
Wait, this guy had 11 children with 5 different women.
Additionally, Steve Hodel also found pictures of a woman that appeared to be Elizabeth Short in one of his dad's photo albums. However, when examined by a forensic artist, the artist was 85% certain it wasn't Elizabeth within the pictures. But in 2014, a different expert used facial recognition technology, resulting in a 90 to 95% match. But much like the other tests, the results were ultimately inconclusive. Steve also believed his father's handwriting was eerily similar to the handwriting of the Dahlia murderer, but when reviewed by experts, the results were mixed, with opinions ranging from probable to inconclusive. George Hodel was also accused by his own daughter of sexually assaulting her, but was found not guilty. Now here's where things get pretty fishy and suspicious, in my opinion. At some point, police officers did suspect George for killing the Black Dahlia and planted listening devices in his home. On tape, George was heard saying, quote, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." End quote.
He sounds like a 1950s mobster.
They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. She's dead, copper. Additionally, he also was caught saying, "This is the best payoff I've seen between law enforcement agencies, and I'd like to get a connection made in the DA's office." George's son also tracked down an LAPD case file that contained a female witness who stated George and Elizabeth knew each other. This strikes me as a really good time to tell you that the LAPD was notoriously corrupt around this time, which perhaps explains why the case was dropped, even though George was emerging as a clear suspect, and would also explain why all physical evidence from the case has magically disappeared.
Wow.
This can mean a lot of things. Some believe that George paid off the police, while others believe that this is just a classic case of police incompetence. But nobody knows for sure. This isn't over, by the way. In 2012, the ever-vigilant Steve Hodel returned to his childhood home with a police dog that indicated the scent of human remains. Soil samples were taken from the alley behind the former Hodel house that came back positive for human remains as well. And while this doesn't link to the Dahlia murder directly because she wasn't buried, it does indicate that George Hodel was perhaps not the biggest stranger to murder. Even more fascinating, Steve Hodel would like to keep digging on the property, but since it's privately owned, he doesn't have permission to do so. And when trying to get the LAPD to follow up on this new evidence, they refused.
It seems like you're trying to say that the LAPD is still trying to cover this up, which to me is crazy. No.
I don't know. I mean,
You can't just shrug and go, I don't know. No.
regardless, it seems that the famous case of the Black Dahlia will remain unsolved officially, but perhaps, I don't know where I'm going with this. I think I know who did it. I'm just gonna end it with that. But you don't feel weird that there's a very large possibility that this is where it went down?
No.
Yeah, I feel strange about it. Back to the office. Oh, fuck.